Hello guys, this is quick rundown of how you can do the spaceship in Houdini. So, well, the first thing, I'm not gonna explain anything about UI or something like, it's basic steps. You can find it in YouTube or anywhere. So I'll just gonna explain how you're gonna do the spaceship. So, this is my node for the spaceship. It'll look complicated and it's fucking complicated, but it's not that bad. Well, maybe it's bad. So let's see from one by one. So first, you make the box. Kind of like made it a little bit stretched, kind of side adjusted, and then point jitter. Oh, let's just look at the wireframes. So point jitter, it kind of makes the shape a little bit wonky, and you just group it. So grouping the inner points and then smooth it out. So with that group, you just selected really like a region of points and then smoothing it out and then transform it to stretch it. And then you use the band to twist it a little bit and then you kind of transform it a little bit. So what it actually is doing is if I add clip node right there and then I change the clip direction to x-axis and then if I add meter, you're basically getting the basic form for the spaceship. And what that pointer is doing is if I add a seed on it, then it kind of gives this very slight bit of change of form. And actually what's driving the change of the form mainly is this twist and taper and squash. So that's the basic of it. Let's undo stuff. We don't need that now. And what you're doing here right now is I added a grid. And then I added a pointer again to randomize my points. And then I added a Voronoi fracture from the shape coming from here to here. So basically those fracturing is happening from this point here, how each point is located. So you see if I change the seed, then it kind of changes the cuts. And then I add a little bit of exploded view just to add like a spacing in between the panels. This is not the proper way to making the panels, but it works. As long as it works, I don't care. And then, so this entire block right here is called for each block, which, well, you don't really need this, but I just added there to kind of use the sort node to randomly apply numbers on those panels I created with Voronoi cuts. So if I use the seed, you see the numbers of the panel kind of changes. So what this actually does is if I just skip right down there to the group, so if I use those seeds, I can randomly assign which block I am going to blast, which means delete. In Houdini, they say blast. Well, I don't know why. So if I just use my seed numbers, then I can randomly select and delete the parts, which is also driven by this point jitter. So point jitter is actually controlling the how the random shapes are generated, and the sort, group range, and blast is deciding which shapes I'm going to delete. And then I just go to unpack, and you don't really need to worry about fuse. Fuse is just there to make stuff safe. And then clip, and then smoothen it a little bit, and then meter. Then you basically get the shape for the spaceship. Yay, right? And you have the random cutting panels, which, well, you can manually cut those panels, but come on, like it's I mean, it's the fun part of designing a spaceship, but once you create, I don't know, 50 variations, then you start to hate yourself, and then, just you need some automation. And the poly extrude there is just to make the panels have a thickness, and then it goes to there. I don't know what this thing is really doing. Um, so let's group and fuse. So what this thing is doing right there is I actually kind of created this small box, and then I've run through the for each loop, which I'm not explaining what it is, but it's kind of like a kind of like a macro. It repeats stuff in a very complex way, which I can't explain in this video, but well, you can find in YouTube. Just search for YouTube Houdini for each loop, then you'll find some awesome videos. So what it's doing right now is it's copying this box into the random locations based on the shape of my spaceship. So if I change the spaceship's shape and here by changing the twist, then you'll see the formation of the boxes will going to automatically follow the shape that I created with this initial input. I'm just gonna undo it because we don't need to do it right now. Come on, come on. Yeah, so it undoes. So as you can see right now, my undo took some time because Houdini is dealing with tons of weirdness going on in there. It looks messy, and it is messy, but it's okay. It works. As long as it works, it's okay. So what this boolean is doing is it's actually carving out this formation of small boxes from the shape that we created. So it's kind of like a secondary detail. And yeah, of course you can manually sculpt it, but well, once you sculpt 50 different variations, then you start to hate your life, and hating your life is not good. So don't hate your life. Life is good. And then this is something called the VDV from Polygon, which is it doesn't look like much things changed, but what it's actually doing is it changes this polygon model into into uh, into VDV. And if you don't know what VDV is, it's okay. It's not really a doesn't matter. But VDV is kind of like a device for me to make sure my polygon model, my model for this shapes doesn't really break. So once you plug in convert VDV, which converts VDV into polygon, then you see a little bit more like a high res polygon mesh than before. And then, so once you get there, what you can actually see is if you clip it again, you don't really need to go through this node for this video, but I'm just gonna show you. So I just clipped it just because I wanted to UV this model, half of it, so I can add like a symmetry patterns as a texture. So in order to do that, because now I have a too high res of a mesh, I kind of did the poly reduce, which is very good for reducing your polygon. And then this gives you UV auto seam, which kind of gives the edge selections so you can automatically unwrap your UV, which you can see on here. And then, there's too many empty spaces under the UV, so you just use UV layout. Then why it's not showing up like in the exact same moment is because there's lots of things to calculate. And then it kind of gives you this a little bit more prettier UV layout, because that's what the UV layout node does automatically. And then adding a material, and then mirror it again. So now this thing has got UV'd out and is perfectly symmetry, so I can add symmetrical patterns on top of it. And let's go back to here, which is like a weird model going on. And then add a fuse. So what fuse does is it's kind of like a mesh cleaning up sometimes. So sometimes it kind of creates overlapping or very close points, and it's not that good for procedural method. So it kind of merges those points so the mesh gets clean. And then 3D polygon again and convert it to polygon. And what this attribute node does is it kind of adds those weird patterns. So if you go in there, what's actually going on is I've created a pattern that gives you this. That's what exactly it's doing. So if I add some sort of like a color correction, well, it's not a color correction, it's a fit range, but it takes, well, I can't explain it here. So just think as it's just adding contrast. So those patterns can be adjusted on here. So if I add more frequency to it, then I can have more dense pattern. And if I want some bigger patterns, I can just adjust the numbers. And if I just want some different pattern going on, I can use offset to kind of have like a more random pattern. I can add keyframes onto this, so I can automatically generate tons of patterns by using some sort of like an animation feature to it, but I'm not gonna explain it right here. So what's actually doing with that is with these patterns, this is actually like vertex color. This is not a image-based texture. I'm using this to displace use like a displacement mesh. So without the colors, you see it's actually interacting with the model and creating this clean, very clean and neat displacement. And then use the clip, and then use meter. Then you get this shape of spaceship with very complex pattern going on in there. And then just add material on there. And then, so if I merge both, then what I get is the basic shape of spaceship. And if you go up there, so this is basically, I'm just making engine part manually. This is not really fun. This is not really procedural. I'm actually kind of just doing it manually. Well, you can still kind of adjust how that Voronoi cut is made by, you can add more cuts or reduce more cuts. Well, you can do whatever you want. And then, just as the same before, I'm randomly selecting which part of the engine panel I'm going to delete, so I can expose some of the parts inside. And just add poly extrude and the material, and same as before. So what this exactly is doing is what exactly the same thing we did with the main hull of the vehicle, and it's adding those patterns on top of that, and then add material and then merge it. Then what you get is something that looks like an engine with some sci-fi whatever pattern. And this is the same thing. I'm just using tube, bandit, and then transform, and then merge. And then in it merge, then we'll transform and the meter. Then you have two engines, right? Which gives you this. So some parts kind of like weirdly shaded. It's because normal is off. You can always add normal on the back. And what is missing, what I didn't explain, is probably this connection tissue for engine and the body. So it's just simple. Just clip it, edit, and pull extrude, and then grid, and then just move it, boolean, transform, edit. So those are a little bit manual operation. So it's not really procedural. I wish I could do it more procedural, but at this point I kind of got lazy. So that's how you make those wingtips. Well, not wingtips, wings, short wings. And if you merge everything, then what you get is the spaceship. Yay! And then the color. I don't know. I don't know. Gray looks a little bit better in your eyes because yeah, I don't know why. And then so this one is supposed to be. Let's just go there and hide everything. So this one is supposed to be the floor pattern. So I'll really just briefly show what's going on. It's almost the exact same thing I was kept doing with the airplane, but just a little bit different formations or a little bit different way of doing it. So once you create this panel, then just use Boolean. Well, sometimes Boolean can clean up the mesh that kind of doesn't break with weird procedural knots. And then, so this is exactly the same thing, but with a little bit smaller size. So what it is doing is it's cutting up those patterns to make more complex patterns. And then attribute delete, color, and then for each again, because I want you to have it interesting. I don't know why it's there. Yeah. So as you can see, I just created one floor panel pattern, and then if I go back here, this one is exactly the same thing again. But this time I just blasted the point because instead of using displacement, I thought, oh, let's just try something else. And then use group. And so what this group is doing is it's actually selecting the boundary edges. And what this dissolve is doing is it's deleting everything except this group. So, oh, low polygon. Low polygon's always better. And then transform. And it's the same thing. It's just meter. Then you get this pattern. Then fuse. Well, just use fuse time to time. You know, like it kind of cleans up your mesh so it doesn't break. And then you don't really need to know those. Blast. Because I kind of wanted to have a little more exposed part. So when we merge everything, we can see stuffs underneath. So if I merge everything, then at the end of the day, you get this. Yay. So there is some weird flickering going on. You can just readjust to your viewport, then it just goes away. Sometimes Houdini viewport does weird steps. So I just added a little bit more bits and steps here and there to make it look like a believable scene. And then always don't forget to put the 3D scanned, you know, like a human being that you can get from 3D scan store. I forgot what was the address. Well, but I don't know. I think everyone's using this model, so I use it too. Then if you go back to camera and then hit the Octane IPR, and just wait it to load. It got loaded on a different screen, but it's not moving. Sometimes it takes time to load Octane. That's probably the only weak part of Octane. I didn't explain about the materials and textures and stuff, but well, that's for the next time. So that's how you create spaceship in Houdini. And if you don't like this spaceship, don't worry. Just go there and change whatever thing you can change in the initial input. Then it kind of calculates stuff because, well, yeah, well, Houdini takes time. And, well, that's very unhappy shape, but, well, you see what I mean, right? You can create variations of spaceships in very short amount of time. Well, I mean, Houdini is calculating right now, but, well, you know, Houdini is not always the fastest way. But if you're creating tons of variations for your spaceships, then I definitely recommend using Houdini to save yourself from the hassle and, you know, don't go into that pitfall of hating your life as an artist, creating 50 different variations that looks the same. Okay, thank you for watching the video, and hope I can do this kind of thing more later. Bye.